first National Trans Visibility March took place on September 28, 2019 in Washington, D.C. With over 5,300 attendees, this historic event brought together both transgender individuals and allies from all over the United States.
We are tired of fighting for our country on foreign soil and then being told that we are no longer fit to serve. We are tired of our murders going without any justice and our murderers out there free. We want to be free, and that's why we are here.
I want you to repeat after me. I am here. I am here. Yes, ma'am.
We need to take back our narrative. We are not victims. We are not statistics. We are not tragedies. We are waiting to thrive, and this is our best year yet, because we aren't here simply to be visible. We are here to be victorious. So when we move forward today, let us press forward with purpose. Let us press forward with passion, and let us know that the fight has just begun.
Hello, welcome to the Mental Health and Trans Experience. I'm Taylor Leanne Chandler. I am the Mental Health Coordinator for Us Helping Us. And this is Dr. Derica Wylie, my boss and the Director of Clinical and I forgot your title, sir.
Right. Clinical Services and Programs. That's all good.
So how are you today?
We're doing really wonderful. I just want to kind of go into, really what our purpose is. We really want to come here and, number one, congratulate all of you and to just honor you all for, standing up for your rights, for just being who you are. And the thing that it just said was, I am here, we exist. I totally appreciate that, and I hope that you all feel that way. We work at Us Helping Us, people into living in the Washington, D.C. area or the greater Washington, D.C. area. And that basically means we deal with Washington, D.C. as well as Maryland. And we provide services, really overall healthcare. We do case management services. We do STI, HIV screenings. We do substance abuse, mental health. We really run the gamut of different things. Our overall focus is to really focus on individuals in the LGBTQ plus community, particularly people of color. And we want to make sure that the overall health is good, but also we want to advocate for the rights of individuals in our community. One of the things that I do want to say is that I am a cisgender male. Identify with the pronouns he, him, and I know that Taylor will give hers as well. But I wanted to say that because I wanted you to know that I am an ally. I am in total support of the trans community. Speaking of, one of the services that we do provide in our organization is Transgender Services. And I do want to kind of tip it off to Taylor to kind of go into that and what her experience is like, in her own life. And then we'll get to the mental health services.
Oh, thank you for that. At Us Helping Us, like Dr. Wylie said, we do offer transgender services, which I'm over. And in doing so, we want to cater to the transgender, non-conforming, and non-binary community. We want to be able to make sure that when you come into our office, it is gender affirming. Because when you affirm someone, it means that you believe they are telling you the truth. And that's very important to us, gender identity. And a lot of times, and oftentimes in DC and in the surrounding areas, there's a lot of anxiety when you go into a medical office or you're dealing with a medical professional. And one thing that I've learned is that sometimes in a medical setting, when they ask you your biological sex, it's not to out you, it's not to make you feel bad, it's not to, make you feel less than, but there's certain biological things that are different for males and females in the binary world and in science with a doctor that need to be taken into account. Like some trans women, if they've had surgery, might still have a prostate. For trans men, if they have not maybe had a total hysterectomy, they still bleed and have complications from those parts. And one thing I've learned, it's always important to call things what they are, not, oh, that little area, or we say what they are, because that's important. But the best practice is to follow your patient's lead. They will tell you who they are. If for any reason they don't, I would suggest leading with, hi, I'm Dr. Derica Wylie. My personal pronouns are he, him, his. And then it kind of sets the tone for it being a safe space. And safe space is absolutely what's most important, especially when you're giving disclosure in a medical setting, because oftentimes we're met with harm in disclosure, or if someone finds out and we didn't want them to know, there's always harm attached to that. And so at Us Helping Us, we want to take that part away and make it so that when you come in, you know that nothing's going to happen that you are not comfortable with. If when you come to get tested, you're not comfortable saying or doing something, we can do that the next time you come in. It doesn't have to all happen bippity boppity boo the first time. And I think that's where a lot of medical doctors go wrong, is wanting to jump in, wanting to make sure that they get to see the patient. And I don't mean just talking to them, see their private parts. And, for years I not lied, but I didn't disclose who or what I am. I was born intersex. I identify as transgender, but I didn't think a doctor needed to know that. And now, after many years and many medical things that have happened, I realize that there's certain things that are different about me than, say the female next door. I don't want to say genetic or biological. I hate those words, and most trans people do. But we're all unique. We're all unique women, men, siblings, binary, gender nonconforming, they, them. We are all unique to our own experience. And that's what I love about you coming in and making our bathrooms gender affirming, gender neutral, making it so that in our forms and stuff, not only do we ask you for legal stuff, but we ask, what is your gender identity? What is the preferred name? And those are little things for us, but to me, those are big things when I walk into an office, or I think when somebody else that's transgender nonconforming or non-binary walks into an office. We do have a support group that was kind of interrupted when COVID started. We've had, I believe, 3 meetups transpire, and then COVID happened, and people are getting to a point where Zoom is just such a daily thing, a way of life that it didn't work as successfully in the virtual sense. So I look forward to when we come back being able to meet. We meet twice a month on the second and fourth Wednesday, and we have great speakers. We have great information. We bring people to you that can give you information and things that are important, not just to fill an hour or not just to take up space. We want to be a tool that's in your arsenal to go forward and, you know, live in your truth.
I appreciate you saying that, Taylor. One of the things that you made me think about is that the society in general, or the world as a whole, we have a lot of cultural competency to really, undertake, or people don't understand our community as a whole, in terms of the LGBTQ, specifically with the trans community. And there's a lot of education around that has to happen. I know at Us Helping Us, we're trying our best to make sure that we are culturally competent as well as being inclusive of everyone. But we are really of the stance that we want to partner with other organizations like World Health Organization and the HRCs of the world to really partner with individuals across the country to make it more welcoming for individuals in the trans experience. And so that's really what we really want to do. I will go ahead and talk about this whole pandemic thing. The pandemic is something that is happening amidst the issues that we are having for the trans community as a whole. The biggest thing that's going on right now is the pandemic that's impacting all of us. Okay, and so there is a difference between mental health maintenance versus having a diagnosis. Okay, during this whole crisis or pandemic that we're going through right now, we're all experiencing some issues. Now, if you don't feel like you have an issue, that's your issue. Let's start. Let's start with that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a diagnosable thing. Some of the trendy things that are going on right now in regards to mental health during this pandemic are things like anxiety and depression. Those are the main two things. People don't know what's going on. We don't understand what this, this pandemic is about in terms of COVID-19 specifically. People are extremely depressed. We're having to do things that we never expected that we were going to do. A lot of substance abuse is happening. A lot of people are coping with the pandemic in that way. Okay, we have to find better ways of doing that. A lot of domestic violence. So when you think about everything that's going on, a lot of us are sitting at home, kind of like we are right now. Some of our families are in the background, downstairs, upstairs, doing different things. Some of us that are in relationships are around our partners more than we want to be. And sometimes these things cause issues, which therein lies some of the issues that we have with our partners, whereas we're getting the things like domestic violence and abuse and all those things. So that's where mental health comes in regards to the pandemic and what's going on. What I encourage everyone to do in regards to having mental health issues or issues just in general, you have to find something that is your happy place. Whatever it is that you do that's healthy for you and your mental health, that's what you need to do. Whether it's hanging out with your family or friends, in a specific quarantine type of situation, whether it's going for a walk in your neighborhood. For me, and I can just be transparent in this moment, I am a hookaholic. Hookah is my thing. It's my thing. It's my thing. So I'll pull out my hookah and I'll smoke my hookah, and that's what I do. That gives me my, my thing that I need to kind of decompress from a long day of work. Mind you, we're also, for some of those individuals that are working, we're working from home. You're on the computer all day, every day. You're starting to get stare crazy. Not to mention, some people have children. So you're trying to balance working on the computer, getting them their computer, getting them something to eat. All these different things are layers on top of layers. And my point is, we all have to figure out what it is that's going to be our place of solace, our place of peace, our place of happy, so that we can kind of pull away from those things. Now, I do know that we all deal with things differently. We do have telehealth, but we do have some offices and things that are open. I encourage each person to find whatever it is that you need to deal with some of those mental health issues or some of those issues, so that you're able to deal with this whole pandemic. outside of the pandemic, you know, there are other issues going on, especially in the trans community. One of the things that, you know, I just got through talking to a partner of ours, Taylor, as well as myself. We're going through this process of getting certified as transgender care professionals. And so that's basically a certification that says that we're equipped to really deal with the issues that individuals in the trans community deal with. And so one of the things that she talked about yesterday was, she talked about a lot of stuff, but one of the things that she talked about was the fear and the anxiety that individuals in the trans community have, as well as this whole idea about passing. And I'm sure individuals know what I'm talking about. And when it comes to passing, I'll give a quick story, and this kind of gets into disclosure as well, Taylor. I had a friend, I'm from Tennessee originally, but I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I had a friend who is a transgender female. And for lack of better terminologies, this whole idea about passing, she could pass. And the gentlemen that she was dealing with, they never knew. But there was an individual in the community, quite frankly, it was her best friend, that ended up outing her to the individual, one of the guys that she was speaking with or dealing with at the time. And so my point is, at the end of the day, there are some people in the community that quote unquote passes, but there are some people that may be dealing with some other issues or concerns. But we have to get out of this thought process of whether you can pass or not, and really wrap our arms around each other. In regards to disclosure, you have to determine what's best for you in your disclosure. My friend ended up getting shot, almost murdered, over the fact that her friend in the same community outed her about I believe it was a lot of jealousy because her friend could pass. But we have to get away from that whole thing about passing and not passing, and really get into a place of supporting one another. I encourage individuals in the community to really go in packs with one another, supporting one another when you go into certain areas at nighttime and things like that. I know, Taylor, you talked about a lot of stuff with me prior to this call in regards to a lot of individuals in the trans community being killed and murdered. Like time after time, I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of people getting killed for who they identify as. Taylor, if you want to kind of jump in there and kind of talk about that whole thing.
That's, I think, the most real thing that needs to be talked about today. And I feel like it's overlooked by the media, people that are in leadership, this current administration. It's hard to tell people to respect and think of us as equals when the government doesn't, when the president doesn't, when they're trying to erase us and take away sustainable jobs, equity in the healthcare system, discrimination. But when it comes to, let's be very specific, Black trans women or women of color, they're being murdered at these outrageous numbers year after year. And it's almost like white America is polarized to it. It goes back to, I think, what I say oftentimes when I'm talking on other issues. Until we value Black lives, period, we're going to keep having this problem. And, I keep hearing people say that, it always turns back to, like, with a rape victim, how is she dressed or what did she do? And the same goes for trans women. It's like, did they not disclose? Did they disclose? The thing is, 9 times out of 10, whether you disclose or don't, either option is still going to have the same result with that individual that's capable of murder, because we're dealing with men who live in a world that their masculinity is so vital and important to their existence. We raise up our young men to be so, what's the word I'm looking for? Defined by their masculinity. And so, you know, you might have someone that is open or comfortable or doesn't care about your trans experience or your gender identity. They love you, they see you. But when their boys find out, when their family finds out, when their job finds out, it changes. It can change. Recently, I think it's in the Philippines, there was a Marine that 6, 7 years ago met a girl, went home with her, had sex with her, and then after having sex, drowned her and strangled her in a toilet. He was originally sentenced, but then recently that sentence was overturned, not just overturned, it was taken away in its entirety. He doesn't even have a record now as far as the Philippines are concerned, because we don't value trans lives. And above and beyond that, we don't value trans women of color as a nation, as a world. And I don't get why that is. I don't understand why people are so concerned with what's between my legs, what's between my siblings' legs. It makes no sense to me. And, you know, it doesn't get the attention it needs unless there's something wrong. Like this gentleman, and I use the word gentleman very loosely, being released and his sentence dismissed because the president of the Philippines wanted to make foreign diplomacy with the US because we have a president and an administration that does not value trans experience in any way, shape, or form, whether it be military service, access to health care, right down to homelessness, in wanting to go into, not wanting, but needing to go into a shelter and preventing us from being able to be placed in a shelter based on our gender identity. You know, and the flip side of it is oftentimes it's a Black on Black crime, which whether it's the trans community or just the Black community in general, that's a way for most white people to dismiss it. And it goes back to the way Black young men are raised up and that attachment to their masculinity. I feel like we're all to blame for that. It's a societal thing, that someone can't love who they want to love without being made to feel less than or ridiculed, or they're less than a man, or they're not a man, or their masculinity is in question. I can assure you that gay men do not look at trans women and go, woohoo. You know, if you're gay, you are attracted to a man. If you see someone that looks like a woman and presents as a woman and you're attracted to them, I'd be willing to bet you like women. Now, regardless of what that means going forward, your love, your affection, your attraction is based on that female appearance, presenting. But yet we want to say someone is gay because they date a trans woman. I've never understood that. And, you know, I don't want to go off on a tangent because that would truly through work lead me to why, you know, there's an uptick in HIV with Black women and the whole down low experience, you know, because of, once again, we don't have real conversations. People can't talk about their feelings and who they are. And, you know, even before the pandemic, that was part of the problem, was mental health. When we do transgender assessments, you know, every organization is based around testing, but what the trans community is screaming for is mental health, sustainable homes, and sustainable jobs. And those are the same reasons why marginalized communities are still battling HIV, is those same exact things. What is your take on I mean, obviously you can answer it better than me on what it is, the disconnect amongst young Black men and the way they're raised and in this masculinity thing. My personal opinion is it's the religious component.
Yeah.
Any Black people I know have strong, strong faith, and their faith includes discrimination against a lot of different communities.
Yeah, so I hear you, and I understand exactly what you're saying. So I'll start off by saying that as a culture, as far as African Americans are concerned, I would say that we have this whole thought process, and then this goes into mental health a little bit too. We have this thought process that what happens in this house stays in this house, meaning private, keeping things in. And so if there's any risk to that house, you shut it down. You don't talk outside of your house. So if you're talking about, an individual in terms of extreme masculinity or whatever the case may be, that could be part of the issue. When it comes to like mental health or anything like that, the way that we as a community deal with things is that we go to our God, our faith, as well as our family. Faith and family are two of the things that we do in our community. And anything outside of that, it's a no-go. And so it kind of plays itself up in the way that you're talking about, and it's not just, individuals of color that do this. There's a lot of people that do this. This just doesn't impact people of color because it's people of color who are receiving all of this maltreatment or mistreatment. And so it speaks volumes about the way people see the trans community in general. And so I think that that's part of the larger issue. You spoke a lot earlier about things like HIV and things like that. Disproportionately, individuals in the LGBTQ community, specifically people of color, there are some health disparities and things like that there. So I don't know if everybody knows, but even like the Affordable Care Act and all that kind of stuff, people not having insurance, access to care because a person presents in a certain way because of them identifying who they are or how they feel as an individual, they're denied service. And that's a huge, huge issue. And the point of me saying that is we have a lot of work to do as a society as a whole. There's a lot of work that we need to do, not to say that it's just a specific community, but there's a lot of work that we need to do. And so one of the charges that I have for myself, as well as all of our staff at Us Helping Us, is to be those advocates, to speak up for what's right, to do the right thing, and to really pull in or hone in on some of the issues in terms of the services and things that are needed for those individuals in the trans community. There was another point that I was going to make, and I know it had to do with how do you step into your own uniqueness? I think that we're all individual people. As I said earlier, I'm a cisgender male. I do identify as a gay Black male, and whatever that uniqueness is. I encourage people to figure out what it is about you that you love. That's a very, very important conversation that you need to have with yourself. A lot of times we put out things into the atmosphere about you don't love me, you have a lot to say about me, you don't accept me, you tolerate me, you do this, and that to me. But I ask you to ask yourself the question, do you love yourself? Are you just tolerating you? Are you comfortable with who you are? And I know that there's a lot of layers to it. I know it's not as simple as what I'm saying right now, but at the same time, we have to get to a place of self-love, and whatever that takes to get to that, that's what we have to do. Also, and this may rub some people the wrong way, but I just understand that I'm coming from a place of love, and I'm coming from a place of not knowing everything. There are people that truly don't understand you. There are people in this world that do not understand the community at all, whether it be LGBTQ, IA, B, C, D, F, G, H, whatever it may be. But transgender in particular, there are specific individuals in this world that do not understand. And sometimes we have to give grace for those individuals who are willing to understand you. I don't want us to always, or people in the trans community to always come off as defensive, or I know that you're tired. I know that you're tired. Definitely, I can definitely sympathize with you because I see it happening over and over again. I can't empathize with you because I haven't experienced that. And so that's where there's a little stopgap in between, me totally understanding what's really going on. But I just want you to know that we have to give people the lessons that they need. But at some point in time, once we educate those people on specific things, that's when we can hold them accountable. But you have to be at a place where you become the teacher. Okay, you do have a duty to teach individuals about you and your community and who you are as a person. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have to teach people how to love us. And that's very unfortunate sometimes. But I think that a lot of the issues that we're having with individuals in terms of being violent towards individuals in the trans community, a lot of that is because of fear. A lot of that is, like Taylor was saying just a few minutes ago, if the homeboys find out, if my brothers find out, if my auntie and uncle find out, then you got to go. And what am I going to do with you? Some people get murdered. Some people get ghosted. I'm sure we know what ghosted means. Basically, I'm not calling you no more. I'm block you, put you away from my life completely. You have to get yourself to a place of taking back your power, taking back your control in your life. Don't give all of yourself to an individual so that they can control and kind of like be a puppeteer and telling you what to do and telling you how they're going to deal with you and things like that. But again, it goes back to what I was saying originally. You have to get to that place of self-love, get to that place of really living in your own uniqueness. And like I said earlier, too, I do think that the community is a very interesting community. I think that, individuals in the trans experience are just awesome. And it takes a lot of strength and courage. Yes, I identify in a certain way, but I do think, and this is coming from me, I do think that a lot of times you all have it a lot harder than a lot of other people. But therein lies the need for support amongst one another, us to pull in different organizations, us to pull in friends and families, different allies. How do we get people to a place of understanding what training is needed, what forms need to look like Taylor was saying earlier, in doctors' offices? How do we get you all to feel welcome and appreciated, not tolerated? And that's kind of where, I go with it. Taylor, what I would like to know is, have you ever experienced anything from a specific community or anything like that because of who you are as a trans identifying individual?
What's crazy? I think people have more of a problem with the stigma attached to mental illness than I do my trans experience. I was diagnosed in 2000 with borderline personality disorder, and I've been very open and public about my diagnosis. And we as a society have such a stigma attached to mental illness, and until we talk about it, I think that's why people end up killing themselves. And the sad part is, for a long time, people associated being trans with mental illness. And so to seek out help as a trans individual is like this double-edged sword. We're at war with our own body sometimes, depending on the individual. And then we feel like we have to go to war in educating a healthcare professional or a therapist, because it's almost like they're gatekeepers for this magical letter so that we can have surgeries that affirm who we are. I saw Eli make a comment in there talking about LGBTQIA+. And I know you well enough to know, especially identifying as a gay man, that you meant nothing but the fact that his perception or Eli's perception was that it was dismissive because so oftentimes we hear people say, LGBTQ, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it may not seem like much when they say it, but if you're not part of our community and you're saying that, it is dismissive. So
Correct.
I hear
Eli.
you, Eli, completely. And,
I do too.
I apologize for that feeling dismissive.
Yeah.
And, I hear what you're saying about we don't have a duty to educate people, but at the same time, it's that lack of education sometimes that I think gets us killed. And I'm right there with you. God knows I've spent a lifetime educating people, and it gets old and it gets exhausting. And not all of us should have to do that or are even equipped to do that. One of the reasons Dr. Hickson, our executive director, made mental health a priority at Us Helping Us was because he knew what our community went through. And he wanted a place that would be safe for people LGBTQIA+ to come and have someone that could listen and hear them. And, that's vital. When it comes to mental illness, for a long time, I felt wrong, dirty, bad. I told you a story once upon a time. My grandfather kept telling medical professionals, screw her head on straight. Like there was something wrong with me. Borderline personality disorder typically comes from childhood trauma. And, I'm not going to go down that path, but I will say I'm a survivor of childhood trauma, and that's where it comes from. But I'm living with borderline personality disorder. I've gone through treatment. I'm on a medical regimen that doesn't make me any less than anybody else, but it helps me live. And I took DBT therapy so that when I'm in those, the best way to explain borderline is you feel everything to extremes. And to give you the Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts, when whoever she was married to, that's how she liked her eggs. That's what she liked to do. She became everything that she thought they wanted her to be. Well, that's a great way of explaining borderline personality disorder. And in therapy, I learned that I've spent a lifetime mourning who I might have been, should have been, would have been, had I not had borderline personality disorder. But at the end of the day, I don't want someone to come at me and be like, I'm mentally ill because of my gender identity. That's just unacceptable.
Right.
And, I don't even know if I would give a free pass to anybody, not even Grammy and Grampy or Nana and Bumpa or Auntie and Uncle. You don't have to understand. It shouldn't matter whether you understand or not. And why would you have fear? What is my gender existence gonna do to your life specifically that people fear this? Statistics and whatnot don't back up what people say about us going in the bathroom and all this. It's this white heterosexual males typically that are the ones that are targeting children in bathrooms. It's not the trans community. It's not the gay community. It's not the Black community. But they keep putting this out there and making it seem like it. And people that don't want to know the truth or don't care to know the truth take that as the gospel. And they think we're pedophiles and we're sick and we need to be helped, or we need to be, I don't know what. I guess that's part of why we're murdered.
Yeah.
It's because fear leads to violence.
Yeah.
And that needs to change.
It definitely does. Taylor, thank you for all of that. And I really do appreciate everything that you just said, because it's so important that people understand that, you all are going through different things. And although your experiences may not be the same, you experience similar things. And I think that you're definitely resonating with Eli. Eli, I did want to pause the number one, address some things, and the stuff that you are saying in these DMs or these comments are amazing. Because this is also another opportunity for you to educate people like myself. And that's what I mean by educating people, because there are people like myself that are willing to learn and appreciate and do all those different things. And to say that it's your duty, that's not really what I mean. But I do think that sometimes individuals come off, and I'm not saying you in particular, but I do think that some people, you know, in the trans community, some people in the Black community automatically come off in a certain way and saying, they'll say, oh, this is a Black thing, or this is such and such. We have to get to a place of saying, you know, this is what it is. But there are some people, and we have to just take it, and it is what it is. There are some people in this world that are not going to like me for who I am. That's just it. And those are not necessarily the people that I'm talking about, but there are some people like myself that really want to know about the trans community so that we can provide the most appropriate care, so that we can be there for individuals, so on and so forth. You mentioned a whole lot of other things, and I'm trying to go down. One of the things,
one thing I want to say really quickly is two-spirited people.
Yes.
Used to be honored, used to be looked up to, used to be cherished and thought of as everything. They still do represent everything that's good about everything, not just male and female or the binary. And how, as a culture, we dismiss that and have come away from that, I have no idea. And, you know, when you think about it, we've transcended the binary in a lot of ways. And instead of being, I don't know what the word is, I don't want to say honored for it, but at least respected, we're ridiculed, tortured, murdered, dismissed, less than. In 2020, it took us till 2020 to get a Black and Indigenous stripe added to the flag, for God's sakes. You know, why is that? Black and Indigenous people have been here since before me. And yet we did not acknowledge that. Even as an LGBTQIA plus community, we did not acknowledge that. And now it's being celebrated in 2020. But why did it take so long? You know, we have a lot to do, even within our own community, to support one another, in my opinion. And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, hey, that's what this is about. It's really a conversation, and that's the reason why I'm glad we're here together, and then also the individuals that are speaking, you know, in the comments. I will say that over the years, in previous decades, you know, being gay, being transgender, all of that stuff was in the DSM, you know, and that's a hard conversation and a hard pill to swallow for myself. And I know for you all, but, you know, I know last year, I believe it was the World Health Organization, they really worked tirelessly to get it changed from it being what's seen as a mental health disorder to it being like a gender incongruence, or, you know, an individual not feeling like, you know, who they were born as. You know, I identify as a female, even though I was born as a male, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. But my point is, there is, and this is kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel, there's a lot of work that is being done behind the scenes, most of it, but there's a lot of stuff that we're seeing publicly, mental health wise, that we are doing to get to a place of, you know, not being seen as a mental health experiment, or being seen as some, I don't know, spectacle. And that's kind of what I got from what you were just saying, Taylor, like being felt like people looking down on you and things like that. We have to get to a place where everybody, no matter what you identify as, is appreciated, is not tolerated, is glorified for that individuality. And I know there's different things within every community, but just as a whole, in terms of transgender, not to make that a thing where okay, you're less than a person just because you identify in that way.
Like,
Taylor, you're getting a lot
like,
of kudos on the side too, Tay.
Like Janice and Eli are saying, you know, two-spirited people are a rare commodity that we don't acknowledge and celebrate. And, you know, someone local to DC, Shimmy, her poetry, her stories are amazing. You cannot sit in an audience and not feel years and decades of persecution, hurt, and pain, but at the end of the day, triumph, because we're still here. Two-spirited people are still here, regardless of what society does to try to stamp us out as trans, as two-spirited, as gender non-conforming, non-binary, all the different gender identities that, and maybe one we've never even heard of, but someone identifies as, you know, society acts out of a place of fear so often. And I don't understand it. Maybe I'm not supposed to understand it, but it makes it so if you are Black or Indigenous leaving the house, you're already a target. If you add trans, two-spirit, non-binary, gender non-conforming to that, you're an even bigger target. And when it comes to mental health, imagine having something that has nothing to do with your gender that's bothering you, but all these other things are making you a target. Like you said, if you don't think you have issues, that's the issue. Some of these issues are out of our control.
Definitely.
They're issues because of how other people see us or treat us or eliminate us or dismiss us. You know, it all goes back to the president and this administration. I look at it this way. If the government doesn't recognize us as equals or humans, why should anybody else? It starts there. So I encourage everybody to vote. I mean, talk about a 180, but voting is everything. And that's where our voices are going to be heard. That's where we're going to, you know, Biden said that in the first 100 days, he would pass the Equality Act. I will say this, everybody was celebrating when we got workplace protections. Trans people are still at the door knocking, trying to get a goddamn job. So we can't even utilize workplace protections because we're still trying to get jobs, sustainable jobs, not something just to dismiss us. People, I encourage people, take someone that's got a 30% skill set, give them the other 70. You know, give them the tools they need to be successful.
Right.
You know, I don't think we're asking too much.
I don't think so at all. And I hear your sentiments. This whole thing about voting is so important. There's so many different issues that I think about, and there's so many different layers to it. You know, an individual in the trans experience or the trans community has to deal with, you know, not to mention individuals who are identifying as people of color. All of those different layers. I can't even speak to it in terms of what you all are experiencing. But at the same time, I just want to acknowledge that I see you. I want to acknowledge that I know that things are happening that should not be happening. And I did read the comment that you sent, Janice, and I hear what you're saying. Janice said, we aren't the problem. Cisgender people need to lead the education. I'm a Native Two-Spirit person, which isn't common. So having us and trans people invited in by the exercise of cis privilege, there's definitely a thing in terms of cis privilege, and I get that. However, I just want to challenge that just a little bit, just because I'm of the mindset that we have to do something different to get something different. If we continue to let cisgender individuals, who are 9 times out of 10 the problem, 9.9 times, probably 10 times out of 10 the problem, control what the education looks like when they don't understand, that's another problem. And so what I'm suggesting is maybe there has to be partnerships with cisgender individuals as well as trans individuals that identify as trans to come together and start that conversation and start that education. Do I think it's your total duty? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. But at some point in time, we have to insert ourselves, or you all have to insert yourselves into the conversation, into the education of it, or even sending in information. And I know you can Google anything. We all can, you know, but that's just like going to school. Everything that you learn in black and white isn't the same in person, you know, and so giving people real life experiences to help them understand you more, I think is really what I'm talking about. But I definitely understand what you're saying. Us as a society, and I mean the world, and I mean cisgender individuals, there's a lot of privilege there. And I think that that privilege goes without knowing certain things. Some people are ignorant to certain things. Ignorant isn't necessarily a bad thing. We have to be able to teach the individuals that are ignorant. Now, when a person knows about something, that's called something different. That's an S word. You know, people say stupid, but I don't necessarily I didn't want to say that. However, if you know something and you still act a certain way, then that's another issue. But if you're ignorant to something, you may still be willing to learn it. I really appreciate everything that everybody is saying in here. I want to pull up a couple more. Angela says, our trans community doesn't know its place in our community. We were the first therapists. We have holy names to Lakota babies. We were valued by everyone. Yes. I just want to be clear that the trans people in the trans community have been on the front lines of a lot of stuff, not just therapy, but for years, the beginning of a lot of stuff. I don't know if you want to talk to that, but you all have been there. And so again, I acknowledge that and I hear that. Go ahead, Taylor.
Janice was saying that that's not what she was talking about. She was talking, you as a cis person have the privilege. And I know you all have heard me talk about it at the off. I talk about my own privilege all the time being white, because it is a thing. And when people say privilege is not a thing, it makes me so infuriated. And I'll give you a short prime example. I left home at 15 and was on my own. But the privilege was I had the choice to leave. I wasn't put out. I chose to leave. So even in the hardships that came in my early part of my life, I still had privilege. I still was going through the world white. I had the privilege of passing. And those things it makes it. Another example that I'm going to share real quick because it just popped in my head. When it comes to police, when I get pulled over, I'm annoyed. It's an inconvenience. I have no idea what it feels like to have to put my hands on the steering wheel, to have to think that I'm going to get lied about, that I'm going to get attacked, I'm going to be murdered because of the color of my skin. I have no concept. So when I go into spaces, I may get the invitation because of the color of my skin, but I always bring my black and brown siblings with me to tell their story because nobody can tell your story better than you can.
Right. That's exactly what I was actually saying. So, Janice, yes, I totally get what you're saying now. People like myself, we have to use what may be seen as, or what is privilege, to help other people to get into the doors, to be able to educate people about who they are as an individual. And so that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Make a space and a place for individuals of all communities to come together to talk about what the issues are. I think a lot of times we're uncomfortable with having those difficult conversations, but we definitely have to have them. Just as a quick thing, I am a Black gay male from the South who held in his sexuality up until I turned 31. Okay, I've just turned 37. And so with all this stuff going on with Black Lives Matter, or with all this the things going on with being from the South, under the Bible Belt where you couldn't talk about who you were, you know, I sympathize and empathize with you all in regards to that. Those are the issues that I have. So in terms of mental health, in terms of trauma, you know, I've experienced all of those things too. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit about me, because I don't want you to think I'm just up here talking, because we all deal with different things. We deal with different things in a different way, but we all experience this trauma or discrimination in some kind of way. And that the biggest thing that we have to do is we have to become allies for one another. We have to support one another, hold each other's hands. I know Corona is going on right now, so we really can't hold hands, but you know what I'm saying. In essence, remain sick, keep your 6 feet. But at the same time, there are ways, even virtually, that we can do different things. There need to be more things like this where we can talk about what the issues are. There need to be more things like this where an individual is willing to come up here and say, hey, this is my story. This is what I'm going through. Do you know how many people will resonate with what you are saying? Okay, you have to be willing to tell that story. Ann says we have to make space for our trans siblings, even when they are not there. It's so important for cis allies to do the work as well. And I think that you said that, girl. Said.
You know, it's just like when it comes to race, it's not enough to not be racist. You need to be anti-racist. It's not enough to just accept me, like that makes you some great person for accepting me. You need to step up and speak on my behalf. And that's where we're lacking. You know, Troye Sivan, the singer, told a story about when he came out as gay, his family wasn't like, oh, you know, we'll get through this, we support you. His dad was like, oh my God, my son is gay. Woo! That's the way we change the world when it comes to our experiences. We celebrate them. We're so quick to memorialize a dead trans woman. Why are we not celebrating Black trans women when they're alive, when they're trying to go to school and they can't afford it, when they're trying to get housing, but they don't have enough money? Why can't we make these things available and invest in our trans communities so that we don't have to end up dead?
Yes, I totally agree. And just so everybody knows, we do have to start wrapping up because it's almost time. But I do want to say that our organization does provide services for individuals in the community. And so you can look us up at ushelpingus.org. There's a lot of services that we provide, especially in the DC area. And we also do telehealth, you know, some therapies and things like that for individuals that need that may not even be in our area. So if you need that, make sure that you reach out on that link. The last thing that I'll say is that it's a quote that I use for my students. I'm a college professor too. Change and comfort cannot coexist. Change and comfort cannot coexist. And what I'm saying by that is there are going to be some uncomfortable moments, but they're necessary. They're definitely necessary for that change to occur. And so if you are afforded the opportunity, and there are some people that have been afforded the opportunity and they did not take it. If you afforded the opportunity, take that opportunity and really maximize that opportunity to speak or to tell your story or to talk about advocacy and trans rights and things like that. You have to do it. It's going to be some uncomfortable moments, but trust and believe you have people like myself, Taylor, and everybody else that is involved in this here standing alongside of you and willing to assist. I do want to say from my perspective, thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I know sometimes it may come off in a certain way, but just charge it to my head, not to my heart, because I know we don't know each other personally and I can't see your faces, even though you can see mine. But this is definitely a difficult thing to have a conversation about when you're not in the presence of one another. But just thank you. Taylor, if you want to say anything before it's time.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I encourage all of you to share this conversation on your social media platforms so that more people can hear it. You can find us at ushelpingus.org. And thank you, all of you, for your time. And I celebrate you and I love you all.